I might have mentioned this in a previous video, but I'm a sucker for clamshell handhelds. Their compact form factor makes them far more pocketable than the competition, while also challenging manufacturers to come up with interesting designs to tackle their low profile. That's why when Lit NXT offered to send me a Miyoo Flip, I jumped at the opportunity. This sleek SP-like feels like the solution to a lot of the general gripes I had about Ambernick's RG35XX SP. It's smaller, quieter, and takes up even less space in my pocket. On paper, it ticks a lot of boxes that should make it my favorite clamshell below $200. And, well, while it manages to follow through on much of that, there are some larger issues to consider which might lead certain folks to opt for a different device. Starting with the design of it all, the Miyoo Flip is simultaneously similar but radically different from its main competition, the RG35XX SP. It even manages to be slightly smaller than a Game Boy Advance SP. Needless to say, I've thrown it in my jean pockets for a full day of work and forgot it was even there. If you've been yearning for an easily pocketable handheld, it's hard to do better. Unfortunately, compared to those other devices, some of Miyoo's material choices aren't as fantastic. The plastic shell on my black V2 model feels a bit cheaper overall, with the texture on top feeling unexpectedly rough, almost reminiscent of some of the cheap 3D printing jobs I've ordered. It's nothing that's impacted how the device actually feels to play games, but it's a bit of a downer whenever I've took it out to play. And then, well, there's the hinge. I'll get into some other issues later on, but Miyoo could really stand to take some notes from Nintendo on this one. The Flip's hinge feels stiff while opening and snaps into one of two predefined positions with a loud click. And at no point during my testing have I opened the device and thought, wow, this feels great to use. By comparison, the hinges on other clamshells by Nintendo, Ambernick, Retroid, and Aya Neo all use mechanisms that allow for smooth opening up to a set position, where the screen then snaps into place. While each hinge can have its own downsides, they all feel remarkably better than what's available on the Miyoo Flip. For me, it's really the biggest disappointment out of the entire handheld. Things do get better though. Flipping the device open reveals a rather good-looking 3.5-inch 4x3 IPS display with relatively thin bezels. Any thinner and I'd probably have concerns about the display knocking against something while shut. The display gets more than bright enough for comfortable indoor gameplay, and then for outdoor gameplay, the reflectiveness of the display really makes gameplay difficult to see in direct light. With a bit of shade though, it's not too bad. Below the display are the typical complement of D-pad and action buttons with a Nintendo layout. Each button's soft to the touch with a shallow actuation point. Side by side, it feels remarkably similar to my aging Game Boy Advance SP. Those buttons are also very quiet. One of my big gripes with the XXSP was that its buttons were stiff and loud. They've softened a bit since the review, but the Flip is in an entirely different ballpark for not annoying the person sitting next to me. The inline shoulders and triggers around back are much the same. They're low profile, quiet, and soft, yet require just enough actuation force that I haven't had any accidental inputs. While I do enjoy clickier buttons or buttons with longer travel with my larger handhelds, I'm a big fan of these lighter buttons for quick bursts of older handheld gameplay on the CTA or during a lunch break. If more clamshells this size come out in the future, I hope they steal Miyoo's design here. Unfortunately, not everything's perfect about the Flip's input. The sticks aren't exactly my favorite. Although, to be fair, I've still appreciated their existence and couldn't imagine a different design that didn't lean on less precise sliders. Each Vita-style stick is recessed into its own well, which allows for what feels like a bit higher range of motion than on a Vita without needing the sticks to sit tall enough to hit the display. Aesthetically, they don't look great, to be honest. As with most vertically oriented control schemes, the sticks feel a bit tacked on. Even the start and select buttons between the sticks look a bit cramped. Fortunately, in use, They feel mostly adequate. The small, smooth stick caps common with these types of sticks don't do them any favors, yet they've still felt accurate enough to use for N64 platformers. Due to the compact design, they also never feel like they get in the way. I've yet to hit them on accident or feel like I need to shift my grip just to use them. They're there when I need them and can be ignored when I don't. In that sense, they're very effective within the constraints of a clamshell this size. And when it comes to actual gameplay, the adequate sticks and soft buttons come together for an excellent handheld experience. The Miyoo Flip runs off an RK3566 processor, and on paper, that's a slight spec bump over the all-winner H700 inside the RG35XX-SP. In practice, it's not a substantial difference, but it does feel slightly better at the edges of the handheld's capabilities. Like many sub-$100 handhelds these days, the Flip can handle PS1 and older, with any flaws coming from the emulators themselves. Dreamcast and N64 are likewise pretty good here, albeit with a few more cracks showing due to power requirements and emulator compatibility. I've actually had quite a bit of fun playing through the first few levels of Banjo-Kazooie and Super Mario 64 on the Flip. Both have run almost flawlessly, with the right stick coming in clutch for camera controls. It's all a lot more comfortable than I would have initially guessed. Likewise, it feels just about the perfect form factor for Game Boy Advance gameplay. Similar to the XXSP, there's a default overlay that fills in black bars, and it all looks very natural. The button feel being so close to my GBA SP combined with the reasonably bright display really sell me on the Flip being a great GBA machine, albeit one that could benefit from a matte screen protector. All of that is backed by some decent stock software as well. Miyoo's interface feels relatively comfy, with decent looking themes and clear navigation options. If I want to select a game, I select games and the system I want to play. Meanwhile, if I want to select specific emulation cores, I can pick RetroArch to launch from there. It all feels streamlined and straightforward in a way that I found lacking on other stock OSs. For folks looking for an OS to pick up their Flip and play a game without tinkering, it's a solid experience. It can even be set to launch into Emulation Station by default for folks wanting an even more streamlined experience. However, it's not without its weaknesses. While the RetroArch menu option is nice, I'd also like to have the option to edit which core each game launches with by default, right from the game's menu. Editing visible systems or adding favorites also isn't obvious. Both require pressing the menu button, but unlike other OSs, there's no indicator of that on the screen. And if I'm getting nitpicky, I'd much rather have right and left presses on the D-pad scroll to the next letter in a list instead of an empty game info screen. There's also no portmaster here if that's something you care about. None of that really impacts gameplay quality, but it could be frustrating for folks looking to tinker a bit more or who want more features in general. I honestly wouldn't blame someone for looking toward CrossMix or Gamma OS for more options. Still, the benefit here is that it's not entirely necessary. The stock OS feels quite good as someone mostly interested in playing games, and I've no real itch to switch away from it. And yeah, that's kind of the vibe here. Some design choices are a bit iffy, but it feels great overall as a pocketable handheld. Gameplay is snappy, the OS is decent, and the form factor is great. For anyone considering a clamshell handheld under $100, the only real reason to go with its main competitor, the RG35XXSP, would be if they prefer stiffer, clickier buttons, want a smoother hinge, or just really prefer Anbernick's design choices. Otherwise, at least for me, the Flip comes out on top more often than not. It's an easy recommendation. Or at least it would be in a vacuum. In a typical year with a typical handheld, I'd say there's a link in the description, go buy it and have a great time. But 2025's not exactly been a typical year, and there are some extra considerations to keep in mind. The first has to do with the device itself. While my biggest gripe with the Hinge is that it doesn't feel as smooth as I'd like, others have reported the Hinge breaking during normal use. Now, with hardware issues like this, I can't exactly validate online claims. I also typically err on the side of those with problems being more vocal than those without problems, thus amplifying the perceived scale of an issue. And given I spend a good chunk of time on the SBC gaming subreddit, I'm sure there's a little bit of that going on here. However, enough reports have happened that I'd highly recommend choosing a store with a clear return policy. If there's actually a hardware flaw impacting the Hinge durability on random systems, you want a way to either get your money back or get a new unit. I'd also recommend verifying that you're buying at least a V2 model, which does have some fixes from the manufacturer to potentially address consumer complaints. From random reports, I've also heard that this issue may be more prevalent on gray systems. Don't quote me on that, but I will say the black colorway is pretty nice. If anything happens to my unit over time, expect to see a pinned comment down below. Beyond that, there's also the issue of US buyers facing new tariffs. For some stupid reason, the US government's currently in a trade war with just about every other country on the planet, with China being singled out in particular. How this all ultimately plays out is incredibly uncertain, but I wouldn't be surprised if prices for the Miyoo Flip eventually increased somewhat. Even if store prices don't increase though, there's always the possibility of being hit with import charges from delivery services directly. To make matters worse, the potential price charged isn't cut and dry and could change at any moment. Currently, most V2 Miyoo Flips without an SD card are priced somewhere between $80 to $90. If US tariffs are applied, expect the price to increase to well over $100. That's worth considering if you're in the US and your budget only allows for the prices listed in stores. Still, like most handhelds, if the Flip's exactly what you're looking for, there's no doubt it's still a solid choice, even with the potential price increases. Granted, the Hinge doesn't get more annoying over time, its lightweight design and solid feel during gameplay help it to sit at the top of current SP likes. Even if they look a bit ugly, those dual sticks do actually enable quite a bit more emulation options compared to a device without them. For what it is, I'd be happy to carry a Miyoo Flip in my pocket each day on my daily commute. Whether you'll feel the same all depends on how much you want a clamshell and can balance some of the current downsides. Those are my thoughts though. Now's the time when I ask for yours. Are you interested in picking up a Miyoo Flip for yourself, or do you currently own one and have thoughts of your own? Let me know down in the comments. As always, if you found this video interesting or informative, go ahead and give it a like to let me know, and then get subscribed for more handheld videos in the near future. This video was made possible thanks to 2 weeks with a review unit sent by Lit NXT. As always, they had no editorial input into the making of this video, beyond asking that I include their store in the video itself. If you're interested in picking up a Miyoo Flip, you can check out a link to their store page in the video description. That's going to be all for this video though. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. Until next time, catch you later.